Hello. All right. Well, I'm going to do something a little different today. We're just going to jump right in. Um, Welcome to History Chats, our weekly program. This week we're talking about some veterans you should know. At the moment, we are currently hosting the Veterans Resource Festival. Is that what it's called? The group here at the Historical Society. And I'm recording this about an hour early, and I'm going to hopefully be done in time to stream it from home. Not just in the interest of hopefully getting this done in time. I thought I would record it just to be safe because there are points where the internet is just not being accessed. So that's going to make it difficult to stream. But that's all right. We can do this program anyway, and we'll talk about Mr. Bill Hayes, who is, I think, maybe one of the more famous, if not directly. You probably haven't heard his name, but you've seen his face because he was there for this very iconic picture, which we will get to in just a second here. But I think to start, let's just talk about who Bill Hayes is. He was born in Wausau, William Edward Hayes, January 8th, 1918. This is his high school senior photograph here from the yearbook. He was actually on the yearbook committee, the Wahiskin. He was also class vice president for the 1936 class. He was in the commercial club, he played tennis, he played basketball, he was singing in the choir, and he was part of the school play. So he was a very active member of the student body and a leader. And that will certainly carry on into his later experiences during the war. After school, he gets a job at Sears, our local Sears, and he ends up working. And I think by the time that by the 1940, after about 4 or 5 years of this, he is actually the head of the wallpaper and paint department here in Wausau. But of course, then war comes. December 1941, the United States involved in World War II, which has been raging in Europe. But now, after Pearl Harbor, we need to get into this, and so we do. So this is that leads him to enlist, do his duty and fill a draft card, which he does at the end of 1941. Now, I don't know specifically when it is that he enters the military service. I believe in 1942. So within a few months, he is, and I don't know if he was drafted or whether he volunteered. I would imagine volunteered, but I don't know for certain. What I do know is that by 1942, he is down in North Carolina at Fort Bragg, where he is training. He goes through basic, and then he goes through further training to be part of the 2nd Armored Division. So he is going to be operating a tank, and he learns how to do all of that. You can see that. Hold on. I forgot to bring up one quick thing. Here we go. So as part of his experience here, we actually have a collection of letters that was written. Actually, one of my first donations that I brought in, or that I processed while working as the archivist here, was a collection of items. Bill died in 2006 in Fargo, North Dakota. But his widow, his wife, gave some of his stuff to an author friend of his, who had been going around and talking to veterans. And so he then decided to bring them here to Marathon County, where we would preserve them. And so there's a number of stuff that also got thrown at the school district, his senior yearbook, for example. But we got the letters and some of the other things that survived from his experience in the war. And so I just wanted to read some excerpts of the letters. We have, particularly in 1942 and 43, before he sees any combat or anything, he writes and receives a lot of letters. It's his connection to the folks here in Marathon County. And I think they give a really good indication of his experiences and what it was like to be in basic training at this point in time. So he talks a lot about, not only getting letters and sort of the news that goes back and forth. He doesn't say a whole lot about what he's doing necessarily, particularly once he gets over to Europe. But this, for example, is an excerpt from 1942 where he's talking about a box of things that were sent over from his family. I received your swell box, and it sure was swell. We have a particularly avid Easter egg eater in our tent, so he was kept quite busy over the weekend worrying whether or not there was any more eggs left for him to peel and eat. The boys thought the basket you sent was particularly fine, and if they would have been girls, would have described it as cute. Thanks so much for the whole thing. Right now, I'm leaning back in my chair and enjoying the tastiness of a fine cigar. I enjoy it as only a veteran cigar can enjoy such a smoke. I speak of smokes sent in the singular, as the rest of them fell apart when the wrapping was removed. I, however, was quite fortunate in not getting any of the other 5. The boys were the recipients of the aforementioned 5. They were quite polite when the tobacco started to crumble apart in their hands and did their best as they could to light up and smoke. It was all in vain, however, and did we laugh. It seems to me that I remember of seeing them, the cigars, around the house in October 1935. The only unfortunate part of their career is that they did not burn up, they died of old age. So that gives you kind of an experience of living in a camp, with the other people, and getting these things. Kind of an interesting, and I think it also shows his humor. He often started his letters by saying "Dear civilians," and he would sign his letters at the end "Adios." Sometimes like Buck Private Bill Hayes or the Candy Kid. Also during this period, he's training to drive a tank. He has to get trained specifically to do that. But he also gets some extra training. So for example, he was called out by his commanding officer and said, "Hey, you need to learn to do the supply stuff. Be a supply agent or whatever for the company." And he was not happy about this. He said, specifically, he was told, go learn all you can about supply end of the outfit. And he said, quote, "What he has in mind, I know not, but if it is what I think it is, heaven help this soldier. This particular end of this work is all grief, and one is driven to the height of goofiness in a very short time as its result." As it turns out, he did end up kind of taking over this and would end up being the supply clerk for the company that he joined. But in that letter, again, in 1942, where he's complaining about, getting the extra responsibilities, he talks about how, well, if I have to do this, it's more than a full-time job, so I'd have to take extra work, my own time to learn to drive a tank. Which it turned out not to be that important, because as he's sitting there waiting to drive the tank, he is seeing the paratroopers. It's a new, exciting sort of style of training, and they're doing their training, and he decides he wants to do that. So he then tells his commanding officer, I want to do that. And he's not happy about this. The commanding officer, he says, "Hey, this is a mistake. If you stick with us, I'll give you command of your own tank." And then when he said, think about it, and when the answer was the same, Bill remembered that he told him he didn't think that he would make it physically. And that made him all the more determined to make it in the paratroopers, which is what he did. He joins the 101st Airborne Division. I'll just take a quick note and say that this was the patch that he wore, the Screaming Eagles. That was very iconic and remains part of the iconography, I guess. You can see it's kind of crinkled. That's because the new archivist in me, when I first scanned this, I decided not to take it out of the plastic wrap for some reason. So it's going through a plastic bag. But I decided to leave it in because, hey, why not? So not only does he go through his training, he gets certified to jump temporarily. Later on, in the 90s, he is given his official wings, because he only got temporary wings here in 1943. But he does get them, and he joins up with Company E of the 2nd Battalion, the 502nd Regiment of the 101st Airborne. Now, you might see that and you go, oh, it might sound familiar. And it's important to note this is not Company E of the 2nd Battalion of the 506th Regiment of the 101st, because that is actually Easy Company. This was shown in the book by Stephen Ambrose, and then later the miniseries on HBO, Band of Brothers. So he's not in here, but as just in the 502nd instead of the 506th, he went through almost everything that they went through in the show or in the book. So if you've seen it or read the book, yeah, he's there through all of this. He jumps as part of the D-Day landings. He is part of the taking of Carantine in France and the liberation of France. He's part of the failed Operation Market Garden, or not failed, but just not successful, I guess. It's probably, yeah. The invasion of Holland. When that doesn't work, then he's put on the line as part of the push east. And when the Germans counterattack in the Battle of the Bulge, he is part of the force that takes up Bastogne and has surrounded this Belgian city. And it's there that he ends up taking some shrapnel. He's wounded twice in two occasions, I think. And he's given 2 Purple Hearts. And then when he's taken off the line after they are relieved, and as he's discharged in 1945, he is given 2 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star. So that's kind of his overview. I don't want to give it all away, but of course, it all starts with D-Day and the invasion of Normandy. I don't want to get into the whole history here of the World War II and how it came to be and everything, but basically, this is at the eve of D-Day. This is in May of 1944. This is in German, but you can see here that the blue here is the Axis. They had basically taken control of the continent. And so knowing that the only way that they could lose control is with some naval invasions, they secure the ground or the beaches all the way from Norway down to the southwest of France. And so they're going to have to do that. Now, the Allies tried to relieve the pressure on the Russians because the Germans then are pushing east towards, to take Moscow and St. Petersburg and all of that. They try to go through this so-called soft underbelly of the Axis of Europe here. So they do take North Africa and invade in Sweden, not Sweden, Sicily. And actually had Bill Hayes not decided to transfer, and if he had stayed with the 2nd Armored, he might have been part of this operation. But instead, they needed to open a 2nd or maybe 3rd front, depending on how you look at this, to relieve the pressure on the Russians and kind of keep things moving. And so finally, we need to open a beachhead. And this is what they end up doing in June of 1944. Some landings in Norway, which is this province. I don't know if they call it regiments at this point, or province, whatever. Norway, not Norway, Normandy. So again, I don't want to get into the specifics. Like there's stuff out there if you want to know about D-Day. But basically, we're going to have landing troops at these beaches that have been just designated, and then the night before, we're going to paratroop and soften up the enemy by dropping troops and bombing and that sort of stuff to try to keep the German defenses off guard so that they're not ready for the troops that are coming in. And to give this a little context here, they went into this with, it's important. Eisenhower, General Dwight D. Eisenhower was the guy in charge, and he issues this famous Order of the Day, which gives a good indication of how important this was and sort of set the stage. You can read the whole thing. I'm just going to play. He actually recorded a version of this to be released a couple weeks earlier. There were some weather issues. So they weren't sure when they were going to actually do it. But this is him recording, and this is just the last couple lines. But you can hear Dwight Eisenhower telling the troops under his command the importance of the mission.
The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck. and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
So that kind of sets the stage of how important this was for the landings. And so for Bill Hayes and his fellow paratroopers, the night before, they are going to be dropped into enemy lines and have to do what they need to do. And so he starts to get ready. They're in this big line, checking all of their equipment. I think he said that he had something like 70 pounds worth of equipment that he had to take in, with him. So he's making sure it's all packed. The chute is ready to go. They're getting all ready to go. They're blackening their face with soot and burnt cork, cooking oil, and cocoa to camouflage and to avoid the reflections. And as they're doing that, he's sitting there in the field, and he hears a voice behind him say, "So, are you ready?" And he responds, "Yeah, I guess so." And then the voice says, "Well, are you scared?" And he turns around and says, "You're damn right I'm scared." And lo and behold, the person talking to him is Eisenhower. The General Eisenhower was making the rounds, talking to the troops that he knew would be embarking soon. As he then asks, "All right, well, who are introduces, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?" He says, I'm from Wausau, Wisconsin, and I work at Sears." And by this point, the other guys are coming around. There's the general, Will Strobel here. He is the jump master for Glider 23, so that's why he has the thing. He then tells, "Oh yeah, I'm from Michigan." Post office worker, I think, is what he was before the war. It was actually the day of his 22nd birthday. And after hearing this, Eisenhower's, making small talk. He's, "Oh yeah, there's good fly fishing up there," that sort of thing. And then he says, "I was just over in the 50, and there's a guy over there that was a milliner, ladies' hat maker. Can you imagine a man like that in a unit like this?" And it's apparently at that moment that this picture was taken. Which is kind of in contrast to what it's often used. It's often used alongside that sort of message to the troops: the full victory, full victory, nothing else. That's the order of the day. But this is not what he was saying. He was genuinely needed to talk to these guys. He knew that they would be experiencing. He was told maybe 80% casualty rate. May well have been sending them to their deaths, and so he decided, I need to distract myself. I need to go and talk to them. And for their part, this helped to ease the nerves and make things a lot easier for them to do what they need to do. So that's kind of the story behind, at least part of the story behind this picture. So get in their plane, and they set off for France. This is the map that he actually was given to study. And he has writing here saying, this is Saint Martin de Variville, Saint Martin. There were some strategic guns, some heavy guns that they needed to take out in advance so they wouldn't harass the landing troops. And so that's what they did. This was the plan. He was part of the 502nd, so the drop zone A, which is right here. This is St. Martin, where the gun was. So they're going to drop here, and then they're going to go assemble, and then go take out the guns. That was the plan. Unfortunately, they jumped at the wrong landing zone. And in the chaos of the evening, there's all this stuff happening. They end up, this is where they actually drop. And the blue dots are from the 502nd. I don't know which is Bill's. But, as you can see, the A zone, there's not too many people there. And as a result, they had to improvise. Bill said that he came down and his parachute got caught in a tree. And so he had to cut himself down. He's alone and behind enemy lines. Ends up linking up with some Americans, and did the job they needed to do. They ended up going from there, and as I said, after D-Day, continues on with the 101st throughout his the rest of the war. But yeah, herring experience, one of those very interesting things. After the war, he goes back to Sears in Wausau, gets transferred to North Dakota. And this is at 20 years after the anniversary. This is in the local paper here in Sioux Falls. They he's remembering what happened, and he tells the story, and the picture became very iconic. It was used in Life magazine and on the cover of Yanks, the soldiers journal, and many other places. And of course, Eisenhower goes on to become president. Hayes voted for him, of course. And in the end, the people in the background are not super important, right? It's as Eisenhower. It's full victory, no retreat. That's nothing else. That's the order of the day. That's what it gets used for. And nobody really cares to keep track of. I mean, the guy who took the picture, the Army staff photographer, wrote down a couple names, but that was about it. Until this, in 1990, the U.S. Postal Service issues a commemorative stamp, and it features Dwight Eisenhower, and of course they use this iconic picture of him talking to the troops on D-Day. Interestingly, it is a artist rendering of it. There's a redraw it to, like, for example, Bill here, he has a helmet on now. But other than that, these, very clearly that's the picture, right? Now, John Hotchner finds out about this. Now, John is one of those guys that you probably never heard of, but if you're a stamp collector or you're interested in stamps, he's an important name, and he has a hobby, apparently. Excuse me. This picture and this information, by the way, is from the Smithsonian's National Museum, listing the members of the Council of Philatelists, which is stamp collectors. And so he is part of this group, and definitely an authority on stamps. And it turns out that you're not actually supposed to issue a stamp with the likeness of any living individual. They have to be dead for 10 years, for the most part. There's some ways you can get around this, but for the most part, that's the rule. And so, yes, Eisenhower's been dead for 10 years, but he says, what about the rest of these guys? We don't even know who they are. And so he starts to look into this. Who are these people? And this brings us to, he gets in contact with Wallace Strobel, who became friends with Eisenhower's son, and, had connections because he's clearly in this picture. And between them, there's an article. Basically, this research gets published as an article in the New York Times in 1991, and it says, "Hey, these are the people that we know." He lists a bunch of them. He when this picture was taken, had been helping one of these guys with his pack, so he knew who that was, and he knew Bill. He says, "I don't know if he's alive. I knew that he retired from in North Dakota from Sears." And actually, what he didn't know is that Bill had later in life taken a new job as a purchasing agent for the agriculture department in Cass County, I think it is. But he was retired at this point. But the thing is, Wallace didn't know, is he alive or not? But hey, he's here. It doesn't explicitly say him, but I think we can kind of understand that that's, he would recognize him. And so, yeah, Bill kind of finds a new, interesting moment in which people know him, and he gets to say again in the 90s with the anniversary, the 50th anniversary. Yeah, I was there. I was part of this. There's this renewed interest, and he gets to talk to local kids. He talks to schools, and it's kind of a surreal thing. Apparently, people would write him from Europe and say, "Could you give us your autograph?" Just kind of an interesting thing. But yeah, he gets recognition. However, I do have to throw this wrinkle in here. As I was doing research here, I thought it would be kind of interesting to show the other guys, who else is in the picture. So I went to the official record in the Library of Congress, who own the original. And so here's the summary where they list all these people. I found at the end, it said, Bill Hayes is not listed, by the way, in this. I don't know if he was the last time I looked, 2017. But here at the end, it says, Joseph Burdett May Jr. above Eisenhower's thumb. And then apparently Ashley Barnes provided this in 2018. And I was kind of confused because Joseph Burdett May Jr. isn't identified as any of the people. I mean, he might be in the picture. I have no doubt that he was. But he's not identified by Wallace Strobel, and certainly Bill very clearly said, yeah, that's me, and people had kind of taken that for fact. And yet here this says. I did some digging. I couldn't find an actual picture of him. And here you can see the internet issues that I'm having, which is why I'm pre-recording this. You know, here is the find a grave. If it was showing up, I could show you the grave. He was indeed in the military, and he served through World War II, Korea, and into Vietnam. So, you know, definitely somebody who deserves recognition. And my guess is, and you can kind of see here, maybe you can't. Let me see if I can just do this. They've decided to label him here, and maybe he looks similar. There's also some other people above the thumb. My guess is probably what happened was, you know, the family story was, you know, Grandpa Joe, you know, was in this picture. He's above the thumb, and so someone decided. And no, this is not me, you know, suggesting that there's any bad intentions here. This, I'm sure, was very well intended, but it, you know, it's one of those things, and it speaks to the fact that, you know, here are all these guys. Who knows who they are? 50 years on, now more than 50 years on, it's hard to keep track of these people. And these are the people in one of the most famous pictures in the history of World War II. And it kind of speaks to, you know, all of the members of the armed services who didn't get recognition, don't get into a picture with Eisenhower, and do we know who they are? But I will say, for the record, I am going to be trying to correct the mislabeling. I don't know, mislabeling, the confusion. At least get Bill's name on this picture, because I think that is important. And I think, you know, I figured this out yesterday, so I was like, I probably spent about an hour going through and just trying to figure out, okay, who is this other guy? Am I mistaken? Is Bill mistaken? Did he ever say this? You know, taking pictures of his high school yearbook, and, you know, okay, well, it's the same expression. I think it's that, you know. I'm pretty sure that this is Bill. I'm fairly certain, but again, you never know. Which I think is also kind of indicative of the story of service. Again, most of the people who have served in the military in World War II since before, they don't get their names in the Smithsonian's or the Library of Congress's website. So doesn't mean that their service is any less important or that we shouldn't keep them in mind. But this is Bill's story, and I think I'll leave it there so I have time to quick get this another location and upload it so that you can watch it live here. Thanks for watching. Next week we will be talking about someone who isn't in the picture of Dwight Eisenhower for sure, but at least as far as I know, but is a local veteran, Lawrence Bellow. I think that's how you say that. He's from the Korean War era, and from the Spetzer area. He's still alive, actually, and I don't think he's going to be joining us, but I'm going to be having a guest speaker, Ronald Drager from the Spencer Area Historical Society, to come and talk about Lawrence and his time in service, as well as I think a little bit about his career with Land O'Lakes after that. So that'll be next week, Thursday at 12:30. Hope you join us for that. I think that'll be a good one, as they always are. But for now, I will wish you a good afternoon. You know, happy Veterans Day. Thank you to everybody who has served and supported those who've served. And I think we'll let you get to it. So thanks for watching. See you next time. Have a good afternoon.